Ambassador Kira Patel straightened her ceremonial sari and tried not to smirk as she watched the Grand Council chamber dissolve into chaos. The massive amphitheater, designed to accommodate representatives from over 300 species, buzzed with alarmed whispers and agitated movements. Tentacles writhed, antennae twitched, and bioluminescent patches flickered in distress patterns. You want to establish how many new colonies? First Speaker Zixtal's crystalline form vibrated with such intensity that their translator had trouble keeping up. 17 is unprecedented. 17 habitable worlds within the next solar cycle. Kira confirmed, her voice steadied despite her racing heart. All in currently unclaimed systems, of course. We've already conducted preliminary surveys. The Arcturian delegation's color shifted to deep ultraviolet, their equivalent of a horrified gasp. The Hive Collective's representatives split into 3 separate entities, a sure sign of extreme stress. Even the usually unflappable Mindweaver's neural matrices showed signs of disturbance. Behind Kira, her assistant Raj Kapoor maintained his perfect diplomatic posture, but she could sense his amusement. They'd practiced this moment for months. The humans' reputation for getting their way in council votes was about to grow even stronger, though none of the alien species had yet figured out why. Ambassador Patel, rumbled Representative Mock of the Silicon Consciousness, their crystalline form refracting light, in patterns of concern. Your species has been part of the Galactic Council for barely 20 rotations. This request is ambitious. Kira stepped forward, allowing her natural charisma to fill the room. Unknown to the assembled delegates, humans produced subtle biochemical signatures that most alien species found inexplicably compelling. It wasn't mind control, nothing so crude. Rather, it made humans seem perpetually reasonable, their requests somehow always worth considering. Distinguished colleagues, she began, activating the holographic display behind her. I understand your concerns, but consider our track record. Every human colony established in the past 5 years has become a thriving hub of interspecies commerce. Our adaptability and innovation have brought prosperity to every sector we've entered. The display showed statistics that even the most skeptical delegates couldn't dispute. Human colonies had an unprecedented 98% success rate. Their trade routes generated 300% more revenue than predicted. Their cultural exchange programs had led to technological breakthroughs in dozens of fields. Furthermore, Kira continued, we've prepared detailed impact assessments for each proposed colony. She gestured, and 17 worlds appeared in the display, rotating slowly. These systems are currently uninhabited, but our surveys show they're perfect candidates for multi-species habitation. We're not just building human colonies, we're creating new homes for all council races. The chamber grew quieter as the delegates studied the data. Kira could almost see their initial resistance weakening. She hadn't lied about anything. Humans were genuinely good at creating prosperous colonies. They just had an extra advantage in getting approval for their plans. First Speaker Zixtal's crystalline form shifted through several contemplative patterns. The data is compelling. But 17 colonies, the resource allocation alone would be staggering. Which is why, Kira smiled, reaching for her masterstroke. We've already secured private funding from consortium investors across 12 species. No council resources required beyond standard oversight. The revelation sent another wave of murmurs through the chamber. Raj stepped forward, distributing data crystals containing the financial details to key delegation leaders. They had spent months building this coalition, knowing that financial self-sufficiency would be their strongest argument. As the council members reviewed the information, Kira maintained her calm demeanor. She'd learned early in her diplomatic career that patience was as important as the mysterious human advantage in securing cooperation. Let them think it through. Let them convince themselves. The Mindweaver representative, a shimmering cloud of neural energy, pulsed thoughtfully. The economic projections are sound, and the human track record cannot be disputed. Perhaps we have been too conservative in our expansion policies. Kira felt the mood in the chamber shift. She had them. Just as every human diplomat before her had eventually gotten their way. The biochemical truth behind their diplomatic success remained humanity's closest guarded secret, one discovered purely by accident during first contact. First Speaker Zixtel's form settled into its decision-making configuration. We will need to establish oversight committees, environmental impact assessments, cultural integration protocols. All already prepared, Kira said smoothly, bringing up another set of documents. We anticipated the Council's due diligence requirements. The next 3 hours were a formality. Debate, discussion, minor amendments to the proposal. But Kira knew the outcome was certain. As the final vote approached, she caught Raj's eye and gave him a subtle nod. Another victory for human diplomacy was about to be recorded. When the votes were tallied, the result was exactly what she'd expected. Unanimous approval, with only 2 abstentions. As the chamber erupted in discussion about implementation details, Kira allowed herself a small smile. 17 new colonies, all approved in a single session. It was a new record, even for human diplomacy. Later, in the privacy of the Earth Embassy, Raj poured 2 glasses of century-old scotch. They still haven't figured it out, he mused, handing one to Kira. All these years, and they still don't understand why they keep saying yes to us. Kira sipped her drink, watching the artificial sunset through the embassy's force field windows. And they never will, she said softly. Because the truth is too simple to believe. We don't trick them. We don't coerce them. We just are. The secret of human diplomatic success would remain safe. After all, who would believe that the mighty galactic civilizations could be swayed by something as simple as human pheromones? Sometimes the best place to hide a secret was in plain sight, right under everyone's olfactory sensors. The disaster at Proxima Station began, as many human-related incidents did, with a celebration. Director Jae-Sun Park of the Cultural Exchange Division watched in mounting horror as the station's environmental sensors flashed from green to red. The massive space station, home to representatives of 27 species, was experiencing unprecedented readings in its atmospheric composition. What do you mean, the photosynthetics are too happy? He demanded, staring at his chief xenobiologist, Dr. Isabella Romano. The holographic displays surrounding them showed chaos erupting across multiple decks. The human wedding reception, Isabella explained, her dark eyes wide with concern. The traditional flower arrangements, the perfumes, the emotional atmosphere. It's created a cascading effect in the station's biorhythm systems. On the security feeds, they could see the photosynthetic delegates literally blooming, their normally modest flower-like appendages exploding into riots of color and releasing powerful psychoactive pollen. The station's air filtration system wasn't designed to handle this level of botanical enthusiasm. Quarantine Deck 7 immediately, Jae-Sun ordered, already calculating the diplomatic fallout. And get Ambassador Patel up here. We need damage control. The situation had seemed so innocent at first. Lieutenant Maria Santos of the Earth Space Force had wanted to celebrate her marriage to Station Security Chief Nadia Volkov with a traditional Earth ceremony. All proper protocols had been followed, all necessary permissions obtained. Nobody had anticipated that the combination of human biochemistry, heightened emotions, and traditional wedding flowers would create a perfect storm of xenobiological complications. Ambassador Kira Patel arrived looking impeccable despite the early hour, her expression serious. How bad is it? The photosynthetics are experiencing what they're calling euphoric photosynthesis, Isabella reported. Their pollen is affecting the hive collective, causing spontaneous individualization. The crystallines are resonating at frequencies we've never recorded before, and the mindweavers. She paused, checking her readings. They're composing poetry. Really bad poetry. Jae-Sun pulled up the station's security grid. We've contained most of the affected delegates to their quarters, but the Federation Council is demanding answers. They want to know why we didn't warn them about the potential effects of human celebratory gatherings. Because we didn't know, Kira said softly, studying the chaos on the monitors. This is new. The combination of factors. It's amplifying our natural effect on other species. The three humans shared a meaningful look. They all knew about humanity's secret advantage in diplomatic relations, but this was different. This was that effect multiplied by emotion, tradition, and celebration. On screen 6, a crystalline delegate was attempting to teach a Mindweaver representative to dance. Neither species possessed what humans would consider limbs. The brides, Kira asked. Safely contained in their quarters, Jason confirmed. They're devastated. This was supposed to be their perfect day. Isabella's console chimed with new alerts. The aquatics are reporting increased bioluminescence throughout their habitat sphere. They're claiming it's the most beautiful light show they've ever produced. They want to make it a regular event. At least someone's enjoying this, Jason muttered. Kira moved to the central command station, her fingers dancing over the controls. We need to spin this, if word gets out about the full extent of human biological influence. She didn't need to finish the thought. Humanity's position in the galaxy was built on careful balance. Their unique ability to sway other species was useful only as long as it remained subtle, unremarkable. This incident threatened to expose everything. Director Park, a synthetic voice announced, the Federation Council is convening an emergency session. Your presence is required. Jason straightened his uniform. Ambassador Patel, I need you there. Dr. Romano, find a way to neutralize these effects. Quickly. As they headed for the council chamber, the station's corridors were eerily empty except for emergency response teams in environmental suits. Through sealed windows, they could see the photosynthetics quarters glowing with unprecedented bioluminescence. We'll tell them it was an unexpected reaction to the flower arrangements, Kira suggested. Focus on the botanical elements. Most species already know earth plants can have unusual effects. And the emotional contagion, the synchronized behavioral patterns, cultural resonance. Many species experience it at significant ceremonies. We'll emphasize the universal nature of celebration. They reached the council chamber to find it already full. The emergency ventilation systems hummed at maximum power, creating distinct zones of filtered air around each delegation. First Speaker Zixtal's crystalline form still showed traces of unusual resonance patterns. Director Park, would you care to explain why my species is experiencing what your Shakespeare would call the marriage of true minds? Jason stepped forward, drawing on years of diplomatic experience. Distinguished delegates, we are dealing with an unexpected interaction between traditional Earth celebration practices and station environmental systems. As he spoke, he could feel Kira's subtle influence working on the room. The initial anger and fear began to shift toward curiosity and even amusement. The incident was transforming, in the minds of the delegates, from a potential diplomatic crisis to an amusing cultural misunderstanding. By the time the emergency session ended 3 hours later, the council had not only accepted their explanation, but had established a committee to study the potential benefits of controlled human celebration ceremonies. The photosynthetics were already requesting permission to attend future weddings. Back in his office, Jason collapsed into his chair. That was too close. It was necessary, Kira said, her expression thoughtful. We've been too cautious, too controlled. The secret isn't just in our biology. It's in our emotions, our traditions, our way of being. We've been so focused on hiding our advantage that we've hidden too much of ourselves. You're not suggesting we tell them. No, but perhaps we don't need to be so afraid of them figuring it out. Look at today. Even with overwhelming evidence, they created their own explanations. Sometimes the best way to keep a secret is to let everyone think they already know it. On the monitors, the last traces of chaos were fading. The crystallines had stopped dancing, the Mindweavers had ceased their poetry, and the photosynthetics were returning to their normal coloration. But something had changed on Proxima Station. Some barrier had been crossed, and in their quarters, Two newly married humans were discovering that their ruined wedding had somehow become the most talked-about social event in 3 sectors of space. Dr. Rashmi Verma stared at her laboratory results in disbelief. After 3 years of studying human-alien interactions, she had finally isolated the compound that made humans uniquely persuasive to other species. The discovery was simultaneously simpler and more complex than anyone had imagined. It's not just pheromones, she explained to the secure holographic conference. It's a combination of biochemical markers, subtle electromagnetic fields, and something completely new, something that shouldn't exist. The small group of humans attending the classified briefing included Ambassador Patel, Director Park, and Admiral Helena Torres of Earth Defense Command. Their expressions ranged from concerned to thunderstruck. "Explain it again," Admiral Torres requested, her weathered face grim. "In terms a non-scientist can understand." Rashmi brought up a complex molecular diagram. Humans produce a quantum-entangled biochemical signature. Our very existence creates a field that other species' brains interpret as trustworthy, reasonable, worth listening to. It's not mind control. It's more like we're broadcasting on a frequency that the entire galaxy is tuned to receive. How is that possible? Kira asked, leaning forward. Quantum effects don't work at biological scales. They shouldn't, Rashmi agreed. But the Proxima Station incident gave us the data we needed. When human emotions run high, when we gather in groups, the effect amplifies. The wedding showed us what happens when it peaks. Director Park's hologram flickered as he shifted position. The implications are staggering, Rashmi finished. Every first contact, every diplomatic success, every trade agreement, they all succeeded because aliens literally cannot perceive humans as unreasonable. Their brains process our quantum signature as a marker of universal truth. Admiral Torres's expression darkened. If this gets out, if other species learn that their decisions have been influenced by human biology. It's worse than that, Rashmi interrupted. I've found evidence that the effect is strengthening. Each generation of humans born in space shows stronger quantum signatures. We're evolving, becoming more persuasive without even trying. The conference room fell silent. Decades of human diplomatic success suddenly appeared in a new light. Every unanimous vote, every seemingly impossible agreement, every instance of aliens accepting human proposals that should have been rejected, all of it traced back to this impossible quirk of biology. Who else knows? Kira finally asked. Just my core team, all human. But, Rashmi hesitated. The Mindweavers are getting close. Their quantum sensitivity makes them more aware of the effect. After the Proxima incident, they've been studying human biochemistry intensively. Admiral Torres straightened. Then we need to act fast. Containment protocols won't work. Director Park cut in. Not long term. We need a different approach. Kira nodded slowly. We need to hide this in plain sight. Make it seem like old news when they do discover it. How? Rashmi asked. By telling the truth, Kira smiled. Or rather, by telling so many versions of the truth that the real one gets lost in the noise. Over the next hour, they crafted a strategy. Carefully placed rumors about human diplomatic techniques, research papers about cultural resonance, studies suggesting that Earth's unique magnetic field had created specialized negotiation instincts in humans. Layer the truth under so many theories that when someone finally discovers the quantum signature, it'll just seem like another hypothesis, Kira explained. We've been too perfect at hiding it. That's what makes it suspicious. Meanwhile, Admiral Torres added, we accelerate our research. Dr. Verma, I'm giving you unlimited resources. We need to understand this effect before someone else discovers it. If it's evolving, we need to know where it's going. As the conference wound down, Rashmi saved her data to quantum-encrypted storage and initiated her lab's security protocols. Through her window, she could see Earth gleaming below the orbital laboratory, beautiful and oblivious. A notification flashed on her screen. Another paper from the Mindweaver Science Academy about human neurological patterns. They were getting closer to the truth, methodically eliminating incorrect theories. It was a race now. Could humans understand their own power before other species discovered it? In her private notes, Rashmi added one final observation. Perhaps the most remarkable aspect isn't the quantum effect itself, but the fact that humanity had risen to galactic prominence without ever knowingly using it. What does it say about us that even with an automatic yes from every species we meet, we still strive to be worthy of that trust? She encrypted the note and shut down her lab for the night. Somewhere above her, Proxima Station continued its orbit, its residents still occasionally breaking into spontaneous poetry when humans gathered in large groups. The secret of humanity's diplomatic success was slowly working its way to the surface. The only question was, what would the galaxy do when they finally understood the truth about the species they couldn't say no to? The Grand Council chamber had never been so silent. The massive holographic display showed Dr. Engsvith, the Mindweaver's lead researcher, presenting findings that threatened to reshape galactic politics. The data is conclusive. Their neural matrix pulsed with certainty. Humans generate a quantum biological field that influences cognitive processing in all known species. Every diplomatic interaction, every negotiation, every agreement has been affected by this enhancement. First speaker Zixtel's crystalline form darkened with concern. Representatives from 300 species watched as decades of human interactions were suddenly cast in a new light. Ambassador Kira Patil sat calmly in the human delegation section, her face a mask of diplomatic neutrality. Beside her, Raj maintained an equally composed demeanor. They had known this day would come. The only question was how the council would react. If I may address the council, the Hive Collective's spokesperson buzzed. Our analysis suggests that this effect is not coercive. We retain free will. The field merely predisposes us to find human arguments reasonable. Reasonable. The Arcturian delegate's color shifted to ultraviolet outrage. They've achieved every major diplomatic goal they've pursued since joining the council. Every single one. Kira stood, her movement drawing every alien eye in the chamber. The quantum field that Dr. Verma had discovered pulsed invisibly around her, but now they all knew it was there. The question was, would knowing about it be enough to resist it? Distinguished colleagues, she began, humanity acknowledges the Mindweaver's discovery. We've known about this effect since our first contact with galactic civilization. We chose not to disclose it for a simple reason. We didn't want it to affect our relationships with other species. A wave of murmurs swept the chamber. The silicon consciousness representative's crystalline form vibrated with skepticism. You kept this secret to protect relationships. Yes, Kira continued, because the moment you learned about it, everything would change. Every agreement, every friendship, every collaboration would be questioned. But ask yourselves this, has humanity ever used this advantage to harm the council or its members? The chamber fell silent again, as species after species reviewed their histories with humans. Trade agreements that had benefited both sides, scientific collaborations that had advanced multiple fields, cultural exchanges that had enriched dozens of civilizations. The quantum field makes you more likely to listen to us, Kira acknowledged. But it doesn't force you to agree. Every decision you've made was still your own. We've worked hard to ensure that our proposals benefit everyone involved, precisely because we knew this day would come. First speaker Zixtel's form shifted through several contemplative patterns, yet the fact remains, you have an inherent advantage in all negotiations. An advantage we use to advocate for peaceful expansion, scientific cooperation, and cultural exchange. Kira countered. Check the records. Humanity has never proposed military action in the Council. We've never sought to dominate or control. We've used our advantage to build bridges, not walls. Dr. Engsvith's neural matrix pulsed with new data. There's more, they announced. Our latest findings suggest that the human quantum field is strengthening. Each new generation shows more pronounced effects. The chamber erupted in concerned discussion. Kira waited for the noise to settle before speaking again. "Which is why we're here today," she said. "Humanity is formally requesting the establishment of a joint research initiative. We want to understand this ability as much as you do. We want representatives from every council species studying it together." "To what end?" asked the Arcturian delegate. "To ensure it never becomes a weapon," Kira stated firmly. "To understand its limits and implications. And most importantly, to maintain the trust we've built over decades." The council chamber hummed with private discussions and neural exchanges. Species that had been sworn enemies before joining the council found themselves in rare agreement. The humans' proposal was, as always, surprisingly reasonable. There is another factor to consider: the Hive collective buzzed. If humans possessed this ability naturally, what other species might develop it? We need to understand it not just to manage human relations, but to prepare for future evolutionary developments. First speaker Zixtal raised their crystalline appendages for silence. "We face an unprecedented situation. A member species has an innate ability that affects all others, yet has demonstrably used it for mutual benefit. The question before us is not just about humans, but about the future of galactic cooperation." Kira held her breath. This was the moment that would define humanity's future in the galaxy. Would knowledge of their ability destroy decades of diplomatic work, or would the trust they'd built prove stronger than biological influence? The first speaker's form settled into its decision-making configuration. "I propose a vote. Not on sanctions or restrictions, but on Ambassador Patel's proposal for joint research. And this time, we vote with full knowledge of human biological influence." One by one, the species cast their votes. This time, they did so knowing about the quantum field, consciously examining their own decision-making processes. The humans watched, knowing that this vote would reveal whether their careful decades of bridge building had created genuine trust or merely the illusion of it. The results appeared on the massive display: 298 in favor, 2 abstentions, 0 against. In the human section, Raj leaned close to Kira's ear. "They knew about our advantage, and they still voted yes." Kira allowed herself a small smile. "No, Raj. They voted yes because they finally understood. The real secret isn't that they can't say no to us. It's that we've never given them a reason to want to." 1 year after the revelation of humanity's quantum biological field, the Joint Species Research Center orbited Earth like a glittering jewel. Inside, Dr. Rashmi Verma led a tour through laboratories where scientists from 300 species studied the most fascinating biological phenomenon in known space. "The breakthrough came when we stopped thinking of it as an advantage," she explained to a group of new researchers, "and started seeing it as an evolutionary response to Earth's unique conditions." The laboratory complex housed teams studying every aspect of human biology. Mindweavers mapped quantum fields, crystallines analyzed resonance patterns, and photosynthetics studied the role of human emotions in field strength. Dr. Verma called out a young Arcturian researcher, their color shifting with excitement. "We've detected similar quantum signatures beginning to develop in 3 other species." This was no longer just about understanding humans. The discovery had opened new frontiers in evolutionary biology, quantum science, and diplomatic theory. Species that had once feared human influence now sought to understand how they might develop similar abilities. In her office overlooking Earth, Ambassador Kira Patel reviewed the latest council reports. The fear and suspicion that had initially followed the revelation had transformed into something unprecedented: genuine collaboration. "The latest data is fascinating," said first speaker Zixtal, their hologram shimmering in Kira's office. "It appears that prolonged exposure to human quantum fields actually accelerates the development of similar capabilities in other species." "Evolution in action," Kira nodded. "We're not just influencing decisions, we're catalyzing change across the galaxy." The truth had indeed set them free. but not in the way anyone had expected. Knowledge of the quantum field had led to its demystification. Species that understood the mechanism could consciously evaluate their responses to it, making their choices more considered, not less. Trade actually increased after the revelation. Species trusted humans more, not despite knowing about the quantum field, but because humans had proven trustworthy even with such an advantage. The careful decades of ethical diplomacy had built a foundation that mere biology couldn't shake. In the station's Cultural Exchange Center, Director Park watched representatives from dozens of species participating in a traditional human celebration. The Proxima Station incident had led to new protocols for managing human emotional events, turning potential disasters into opportunities for interspecies bonding. They're adapting faster than we expected, Admiral Torres observed, joining him at the viewport, both to knowing about the field and to developing their own versions of it. Evolution never stops, Park replied. We just happened to develop this ability first. Now we're helping others understand their own potential. The Admiral smiled. Who would have thought our greatest diplomatic achievement would come after they discovered our secret? In the research labs, Dr. Verma's team had made another breakthrough. The quantum field wasn't just strengthening. It was becoming more refined. Humans were developing better control over it, learning to modulate its effects consciously. It's like discovering we've had an extra sense all along, Rashmi explained to her colleagues. Now that we know about it, we can learn to use it responsibly. The Galactic Council had transformed, too. Knowledge of biological influences had led to new protocols for all species, acknowledging and accounting for natural advantages rather than pretending they didn't exist. In the end, humanity's greatest contribution to galactic civilization wasn't their mysterious ability to get universal yes votes. It was their demonstration that power didn't have to corrupt, that advantages didn't have to be exploited, and that trust freely given could survive even the most shocking revelations. As Kira prepared for another council session, she reflected on how far they'd come. The quantum field still functioned, still made humans seem reasonable to other species. But now it was just one factor among many, understood and accepted as part of the complex tapestry of galactic life. Ready for today's vote? Raj asked, joining her on the way to the chamber. You know, she smiled, I think I'm looking forward to some no votes. They prove we've succeeded. How so? Because now when they say yes, we know it's not just because of biology. It's because we've earned it. The chamber doors opened to reveal representatives from across the galaxy, each carrying their own hopes, fears, and emerging abilities. The age of secrets was over. The age of understanding had begun. And somewhere in the quantum fields that connected all living things, the next stage of galactic evolution was already taking shape, guided not by force or fear, but by the most powerful force in the universe, trust freely given and honestly earned.